A new world. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Live at 5 on
Where are we?
Monday. Hello, hello, hello. Nice to see you. And I was just we're a few minutes late. Not that that's a new thing or anything. But Facebook decided to update itself, and they didn't tell me. Isn't that strange? I exactly know. I must have missed the memo. But I hope you've had a nice Shabbos. Welcome back. Nice to have you in the studio with me. I was kibitzing with Larry here in the studio that this picture, my background I selected for today, is a nice calm morning at the Dead Sea. So if you've ever been out there, one of the Dead Sea resorts, and he and I were there together on this particular trip, and you see there's like the little umbrellas and cabanas, and there was nobody else in the picture, but you can kind of float out there and hang out under the little umbrella and do the Dead Sea float. If any one of you haven't been to the Dead Sea, it's really something to experience. I'm from Virginia, and Virginia Beach more specifically, and sort of grew up as a fish in the in the Atlantic. And I can tell you that the Dead Sea is so interesting and so unique, a body of water with all its salt and its chemicals and everything. It's thick water, and you just cannot swim in it. You float like, it can float on your stomach. You can float on your back. You can read a newspaper. You never get your face in the water because you don't want to do that. The water doesn't, and your eyes don't like each other. And it's like you couldn't swim if you tried. The first time I went in there, people said, "Yeah, you can't swim in that." I said, "I'm from the Virginia beach. I can swim in anything. I'll show you." And I promptly dove under there, and I was miserable. That was a bad idea. But it's a very, very unique body of water. One of the incredible things about it too is it is the lowest place on earth. I don't know if anybody realized that. The Dead Sea is the lowest place on earth. You are I believe it's like 1,000 feet below sea level. It's something like 300-400 meters, something like 1,000 feet below sea level. And so you see the cliffs. Those are that's the cliffs of Israel over there. And the famous tourist attraction of Masada, is just down there a little bit, not too far. And there's Ein Gedi, which is a beautiful spring there, very historic. That's a place where in Tanakh King David hid from. He wasn't yet King David; he was just David running from King Saul, who was after his head. And he crept into a cave in this spring, Ein Gedi, and you can go over there. It's not far. Really, really, really special and beautiful. And it's just a little over a month before Israel opens up to tourism again. So make your plans now, get your tickets, and off we go. Welcome, everyone. So this week, we are starting a new week, a new double parsha. We'll talk a little bit about later on the show. This week, there are two more parshas. We read two last week. We'll read two more this week. It's we started today the fourth week of the Omer, fourth week of 7. So we're really crossed over into the middle. It's the seventh of ER. And interestingly, today in Jewish history, now this is just a yard site for you. I happen to notice that today is the yard site of one of the commentaries on the Torah, or one of the authors of a commentary on the Torah called the Kli Yakar. And I did not know very much about it until I looked up and realized that his yard site was today. I'm going to read a little bit about him. But the Kli Yakar, that I've quoted him before on Live at 5, it's a very beautiful, meaningful commentary on the Torah. And I've shared several things from his commentary, and I didn't really know that much about him. So today we're going to learn, because today is his yard site. May his memory be for a blessing. So the author of this commentary is known as Rabbi Shlomo Ephraim of Lunchitz. Okay, now that was not, so he lived before last names were invented. So those are his two first names. Those are not his last name. He doesn't have a last name. Shlomo Ephraim, apparently his name originally was Ephraim, and the name Shlomo was added in the middle of his life when he was ill. He was 51 years old, and he had a significant illness. And we have a custom that when someone is ill, that we'll often, especially if it's a serious illness, we'll often add a name. So what's the idea? The Talmud says, Shinoi Hashem, Shinoi Mazel, which means if you change someone's name, you could effectively change their mazel, or their, what spiritually speaking is their reality, what's coming their way. You could change that. So if things are not going well, let's say a person has a lo aleinu, God forbid, if the person has serious illness. So sometimes we will make a point to add a name, to change, effectively changing their name. And with that, our prayer that we could change their mazel. So he and it seems that based on the little bio I've got here, it seems that he lived for another 18 years after they added the name Shlomo. He had been called Rabbi Ephraim until that point. And he was, in fact, the rabbi of Prague. He was in 1604. So he lived from 1550 of the Common Era till 1619. So what does that make? The mid 16th century he was born. And in 1604, the beginning of the 17th century, he became the rabbi of Prague. Prague, an amazing city of Jewish scholars and Jewish scholarship. And there, in fact, he was on the Beis Din, which means the court of that city, with Rabbi Yeshaya Horowitz, also is known as the Shloh HaKadosh. Now, interestingly, Rabbi Yeshaya Horowitz seems to have a last name. So maybe last names were invented right about that time, because his last name is Horowitz. If you ever met any Horowitzes, that's a very time-honored Jewish last name. And he wrote this colleague, Rabbi Horowitz, who was on the Beis Din with Rabbi Ephraim. He wrote a commentary, very famous and Kabbalistic commentary on many things, called the Shloh. The Shloh is an acronym which stands for the Shnei Luchos Habris, Shin Lamed Hey, the two tablets of the covenant. You know, like we talk about the 10 Commandments, the two tablets of the covenant. So in Hebrew, if you take the letters, the first letters of the three words which spell out the two tablets of the covenant, it's the Shloh. And is a very famous colleague of ours, of our Rabbi Ephraim, who we're talking about, whose yahrzeit was today. He had as well some amazing students. One of his students was Rabbi Yomtiv Lippman Heller, some other good Jewish last names, who wrote a commentary, a very famous commentary called the Tosfos Yomtiv on the entire Mishnah. Amazing scholarship. He, the Kli Yakar, this Rabbi Ephraim, who authored the commentary of the Kli Yakar, he passed away in Prague. He wrote several other works. He wrote the Olos Ephraim. He wrote the Amudei Sheish. These are some other books. This particular book, commentary of his, the Amudei Sheish, basically means the 6 pillars. And he wrote Musar discussions about the 6 basic pillars, as he enumerated them, of Jewish life. And they are, interesting, Torah and Avoda. Avoda means service, prayer. Number 3, Gemilas Chasadim, kind deeds. Number 4, Din, or justice. Number 5, Emes, truth. And number 6, Shalom, meaning peace. So he wrote that. He wrote some other things. Ir Gibarim, Rivas Ephraim, Sifsei Das, Orach L'chaim. Wow, he wrote a lot. And he, in fact, lastly, will mention that he actually wrote one of the liturgical poems that we call Slichos, that we read about the Jews of Prague in a terrible pogrom that they experienced in the year of 1611 of the Common Era in his lifetime. So one of the ways that some of these horrible pogroms and things that occurred in European, particularly in European history, but in all Jewish history, one of the ways that we commemorate it is we write beautiful, meaningful kinos or liturgical poems. And he wrote one that we say throughout the year. I wonder when those slichos are said. I wonder if it's in the slichos said on Tisha B'Av. I'll have to look at that. So anyway, today is his yahrzeit, and as we say, may his memory be for a blessing. He was an unbelievable, prolific author, and wrote many beautiful commentaries, and contributed greatly to even today some of the things that are read. There's one version of the Torah which is popularly printed. It's called a Mikros Gedolos, which means the big expanded verses, which means it's, each of the verses have like a number of commentaries right there on the very page. And it takes a lot of space because, you have a lot of commentaries printed there, and maybe 10 or sometimes 12. And of those top 10 commentaries in the Mikros Gedolos that I have is his commentary, the Kli Yakar. Can you imagine being one of the top 10 commentaries of all time on the Torah to be printed in the sort of like the standard teacher's edition? I joke, it's not really the teacher's edition, but I mean, it has a lot of good stuff in it. That would be a pretty big honor, and therefore very worthy of recalling his memory. May his memory be for a blessing. Okay, now in addition, I thought that today we would talk just a little bit about the first of the two of the parshas that we're going to read later this week, being that they're relevant this week. And additionally, the first one in particular is a parsha which discusses the topic that the Daf Yomi study, course of study of the Talmud is currently studying right now. So if you're familiar, Daf Yomi, we've mentioned here before, is the international cycle of daily Talmud study. And if a person wants to launch out into the sea of the Talmud, as it's called, the Yam HaTalmud, we often think about it like you set out at sea. It's a big ocean. It's a vast ocean of study. If you study a 1 page a day, which is in and of itself quite a chunk, and you continue like that without taking a break, 7 days a week, every day of the month, every day of the year, for 7.5 years, you'll have taken a look at the Talmud once. So it's a big undertaking. And the current tractate of the Talmud that the cycle is studying is called Yuma, and Yuma is an Aramaic way of saying Yom, as in Yom Kippur. And it's the tractate all about Yom Kippur, the holiday of Yom Kippur. We're talking about holidays, and we're talking about Yom Kippur. Now, that similarly is the topic of conversation of the Parsha. And Parsha's Achrei Mos talks about the particular, unique, and amazing things that are done once a year in the temple by the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol is the chief of our small army of priests who take turns working in the temple, and he is at the head. The big Kahuna, as we say in Hawaii, which is the great Kohen. And he and only he would be allowed to go into the Holy of Holies, and only on Yom Kippur. So it's a very meaningful day. The opportunity of someone to go and to represent the Jewish people. He's our representative. He goes into the Holy of Holies 1 day a year, this Holy of Holiest days of Yom Kippur, and that is the topic. All the things that he's going to do are the subject of the parsha. We read about it on Yom Kippur itself. We read this parsha, and there it describes everything that he's going to do. It really is a very fascinating day for him. If he was, the first topic in the Talmudic tractate about Yuma is about the week prior. And the entire week, for an entire week prior to Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol was sequestered in the temple. We took him from his home, and we brought him to the temple, and he's sequestered for those 7 days. And there's a lot of training, make sure he's ready, and he has to know everything, has to be prepared. And then the night before, he's got to stay up all night so that he's totally zeroed in and focused. I mean, just like every college kid knows, if you really want to do well on an exam, you need to stay up the entire night before to cram for it. And that's what he was doing as well, staying up and preparing. And he would be in a state of quite exalted holiness, hopefully. The Talmud also discusses the fact that that historically speaking, there was kind of a sad period of time in Jewish history during the Second Temple when the Kohen Gadol was not really selected by merit in the normative process. Rather, it was something that was could be bought for by influence and wealth. And you had a variety of wealthy Kohanim who actually purchased the opportunity to do it. This is a bit of a tragedy that it went like that. Things were not being done in the way that they should have been done. And the king, or whoever it was at the time, this was after the Hanukkah story, and they would appoint a head Kohen like that, a Kohen Gadol, based on they took a couple of bucks for it. It was a little bribe and a little influence, and the next thing you know, you too could be a Kohen Gadol. Reminds me of a joke, actually. There was a guy, and he went to the rabbi, and he said, Rabbi, I want you to make me a Kohen. So the rabbi says, listen, I can't make you a Kohen. You got to be born a Kohen. He says, no, I'm insistent, Rabbi, and I will make a very large donation to the synagogue if you make me a Kohen. So the rabbi says, well, okay, now you're talking, but why do you want to be a Kohen exactly so much? So the guy says, my father was a Kohen and my grandfather was a Kohen. So now, of course, the reason that's a joke is because the only way to be a Kohen is you have to descend from a Kohen, because Aaron was a Kohen and his sons were Kohanim after him, and their sons and their sons. It's just passed down. Anyone that you know that is genuinely a Kohen, and that doesn't mean that his last name is Kohen, which may or may not be a good indication. I know some that are and some that aren't. But if someone is genuinely Kohen, that means they're a father-son descendant from Aaron, Moshe's brother, the first and original Kohen. You're literally a patrilineal descent directly from him to him. It's really an incredible thing that there are such people. Can you imagine what an incredible lineage that you have? Again, I don't know if people have it written out or they have it but it's a family tradition. We are Kohanim. And there are lots of last names that, again, it's not foolproof, but generally and often indicates that a person is a Kohen. Let's say if the last name is Cohen or Khan or Katz or Rappaport. There are all kinds of names that we happen to know that are names of families that in the Jewish people that were descended. We mentioned before Rabbi Horowitz, the Shlaw. Horowitz is a famous Levi name. If you know someone that's a Horowitz, chances are they're a tribe from the Levite tribe. There's certain names that are associated with that. So the Kohen Gadol doesn't have to be the child of the previous Kohen Gadol. He has to be a Kohen, but then from amongst all the Kohanim, someone would generally be chosen to be the Kohen. Now, Maimonides records based on what it says in the Talmud, that the way that we should choose a Kohen Gadol is because he's exceptional amongst the Kohanim on several fronts. He should be exceptional in terms of wisdom, knowledge. Should be exceptional in terms of being capable, physically capable, interestingly, and in terms of being wealthy. Talmud actually says, well, what if he was all those other things, but he wasn't wealthy enough? So it says that all the other Kohanim would give him some of their dollars, their shekels, until he would be the wealthiest of them all, interestingly, so that he would qualify on all fronts. And generally it was this kind of a meritorious position. We would select the right person for the job. However, there was this sad, tragic state of affairs that in the Second Temple period, it was for hire, and a person could buy their way into that great role. Unfortunately, this is kind of a crazy story, a crazy thing. If a person were the Kohen Gadol, but were not worthy to be the Kohen Gadol, and it was Yom Kippur, and they were performing that incredibly unique annual service to go into the Holy of Holies, if they weren't worthy, they wouldn't survive the experience. They would literally perish on the spot in the Holy of Holies. And that became such a problem that they used to send him in with a rope tied around his foot so that if he didn't survive the experience, they would pull him out. That's exactly right. And that happened. And this is going to sound very incredible, but the Talmud records that this happened for a serious period of time every year. Every year there was a new Kohen Gadol who bought his way into that station, was totally unfit for the job, went into the Holy of Holies on that holy day, died on the spot, and was pulled out by a rope by his feet. You got to ask yourself, okay, I understand the first time, the second time, the third time, but it was every year for quite a long time. Do you think, who's going to do that? It's a suicide mission. Who's going to want to do that? You buy your way in and then you're not going to make it. You really think you're the one that's different than all the ones before you that already died? It became so common. They sent him in with the rope in advance. They knew they were telling him. Can you imagine walking in with the rope? They're telling you, chances are we're going to be pulling you out of here. And he would do it anyway. It's a very strange state of affairs. The only thing I can think of is that, and this is, something that maybe is hard for us to even connect to, but it must have been such an incredible desire, a rush, I want to go, I want to go into the Holy of Holies. And the only one who would ever go in there. I want to go in. I want to be the Kohen Gadol. And I know that I may not survive it. I know that I'm probably not going to survive it, but I want my chance to go, as it were, like I'm going to get that close, go almost like get a brush with heaven. I'm going to meet God, something like that, whatever that experience is going to be like. It must have been such a desirous thing to do. Desirable, such an incredible experience. It was such a rush, before they had invented the roller coaster and the, and space travel. And a person, just wanted to do something that was, bungee jumping. They wanted it would be such a spiritual rush that even if it was risky, even if they thought there was a good chance that they weren't going to come back, they were going to give it a try. I mean, think about this. There are people that die doing all kinds of crazy outdoor events every year. Up in Summit County, the people that go hike and ski in the same mountains, every year there's an avalanche and these people die. So they know when they go out, they go for the thrill anyway, right? That's just a physical thrill. This is something much deeper. It's a spiritual thrill. It's, and I go into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. I guess people would do it. People, it was worth it. They buy their way in, and it was a one-way trip. But appropriately, what's supposed to happen is that the Jewish people have a representative that really is appropriate, a holy person, a knowledgeable person, a spiritual person, a humble person. There's actually the most amazing story of the Talmud about one Kohen Gadol. I think his name was Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael Kohen Gadol is a very famous Kohen Gadol, and he was the Kohen Gadol for 80 years in the Second Temple period. 80 years. I mean, he was the real deal, right? He went into the Holy of Holies 80 times. So the Talmud tells a story about one time he went in there, and this is an incredible story, okay? An incredible story. He goes in, and it's Yom Kippur, and he's doing the service described in the Parsha, which includes bringing a pan of incense in, and there's a cloud of smoke of incense that he brings in with him. And there's an angel there that he encounters, who the Talmud describes it gives the name Yekatriel. Now, Yekatriel is kind of an angelic name. It has that El ending, like Raphael, Gavriel, Uriel, Michael. That's the angel's name ending. Okay. And Gavriel, all those names, all those angels have that as the end of their name, because it kind of means something of God. Raphael, my name means healer of God. Gavriel means the strong one of God, etc. You get the idea. Yekatriel, in part, is from the could be understood as the name of crown. It's the crown of God. Okay, the crown of God. This angel, and this angel says, this is the way that's recorded in the Talmud. This angel says to Rabbi Yishmael, the Kohen Gadol, the human being in the story, the angel says to him, "Give me a blessing." Amazing. It should be the other way around, right? As a katriel, as if God himself, as the voice of God through this angel, speaks to the human being on Yom Kippur and says, "Give me a blessing." And you know what blessing he gives, as it were, God Almighty, as if it were, he gives Rabbi Yishmael, the Kohen Gadol, gives him the blessing. He says, "May your compassion overcome your judgment, and that you go above and beyond for your people Israel." Unbelievable prayer. That's the prayer that he has for God. May your compassion, God, your divine compassion. Here's my prayer for you. May your compassion overcome your, as it were, supersede your judgment. And may you go above and beyond, lifnim mishur sadin, for your beloved people Israel. Unbelievable story. And and you know what what the angel's reaction was? It says that the angel nodded his head as if to say, "Amen." This is like a godly representation, an unbelievable idea that what would God could ask a blessing for us? It's the Gemara, the Talmudic story that I'm quoting for you is beyond. It's not normal. Why should God need a blessing from us? But what would the blessing be? The blessing, what would God's prayer for himself be, as it were? That he says, "You're right, that's my prayer. You got it. You nailed it. What's my prayer?" His prayer is that he himself could, as it were, the divine Almighty, on the day of Yom Kippur, could, instead of being in the seat of judgment, be in the seat of mercy and compassion, and go above and beyond to do better for us than we deserve, not to judge us with the way and send us what we deserve, but to judge us instead the above and beyond, give us better than we deserve, be compassionate with us. That is the whole, in a sense, the whole prayer, our whole hopes for the high holidays. That instead of God to be seated on his throne of judgment, he would get up from the throne of judgment and get onto a different chair, a throne of compassion, a seat of compassion from which he could do above and beyond. He could do better for us than we deserve. That's the it's a really a significant and a big idea that we could potentially, that would be God's own desire for himself, the way he would react to us. He would, he would treat us. And that was the prayer that Rabbi Shmuel, the Kohen, tells this awesome story. So you can imagine a place like that, where on one day a year, so holy, could potentially have such an experience, to have the most, this is in a time when prophecy is no longer extant. There's no real prophecy per se. This is a historic moment after that point. And yet, there's the potential to have that kind of a direct interaction with the divine. That's something that we would all, that's an exciting possibility, the likes of which, all of us would really be excited to have. Not that we can, but for a small price, maybe I can make you a Kohen also, just a couple of bucks, big donation. We could talk about it, we'll make a Kohen, and then you could do that. We pray that God willing, that we should have our temple in our midst speedily once again. And then really the stuff that we're reading about in the Parsha is going to happen. And we read about it in the Parsha, we read about it on Yom Kippur, but we don't actually have it going on. It's not actually happening until the temple is rebuilt. We don't have a Kohen Gadol, and we don't have this stuff, and we can study it and talk about it and read it, and it's very beautiful and meaningful. But really, our prayer is that we should soon, speedily in our days, have that opportunity, that temple, that opportunity once again, that there'll be a Holy of Holies, and there'll be a Kohen Gadol, and the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur will be able to go in there and go to bat for us, the Jewish people, and request of God that he should send us divine compassion. Amen. Keni Ratzon. Here's calling it a day. Have a wonderful, a healthy and a holy day. And we'll see you, God willing, tomorrow as we continue on Live at 5.